The fluorescent lights of the rental office buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the worn linoleum floor. Sarah Mitchell sat across from the property manager's desk, her 7-year-old daughter, Emma, fidgeting in the chair beside her. The manila envelope in Sarah's lap felt lighter than it should have, and her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched Mr. Hendricks count the bill she had just handed him. His fingers moved methodically through the stack, crisp 20s and 10s, followed by crumpled 5s and 1s. Then came the quarters, rolling across the desk in small silver towers. Sarah had spent the previous night separating coins by denomination, her fingers cramping as she rolled them into paper sleeves. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months of double shifts at the diner, every tip carefully hoarded, every expense calculated down to the penny. Emma swung her legs beneath the chair, her sneakers scuffed at the toes, one lace frayed and knotted where it had broken weeks ago. She hummed softly to herself, oblivious to the tension radiating from her mother's rigid posture. Sarah reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand, trying to communicate reassurance she didn't feel. Mr. Hendricks finished counting and looked up, his expression neutral but not unkind. He had managed this apartment complex for 15 years and had seen every variation of hardship walk through his door. Still, what he had to say next never got easier. "Mrs. Mitchell, you're short $243. The words landed like a physical blow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had counted the money 4 times, spread across her kitchen table at 3 in the morning while Emma slept in the next room. She had been so certain she had enough. "That can't be right," she whispered, though she knew better than to argue. "I counted it. Multiple times. I understand, but the rent is $1,200, and what you've given me is $957. He slid the money back across the desk toward her, the coins clinking softly. "I'm sorry, but without the full amount, I can't accept this as payment." Sarah's hands trembled as she gathered the bills and coins, shoving them back into the envelope with none of the care she had taken in organizing them. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one dissolving before it fully formed. Her credit card were maxed out. Her parents had passed away years ago. Her sister lived paycheck to paycheck in another state. There was no one left to ask. "Please," she said, hating the desperation in her voice. "I just need a few more days. I'm picking up extra shifts this week. I can have it by Friday." Mr. Hendricks sighed, pulling out a folder from his desk drawer. "Sarah, you've been a good tenant for 3 years. You've never been late before, and I appreciate that. But the owners have a strict policy. If I don't have the full payment today, I have to start the eviction process. That's the rule." Eviction. The word felt foreign in her mouth, something that happened to other people, not to her. For being 2 days late, you're not 2 days late. According to my records, you're 17 days late. Grace period ended last week. Sarah's vision blurred. Of course, she had been so focused on scraping together enough money that she had lost track of the actual date. The 5th of the month had come and gone, while she worked morning shifts at the diner and night shifts cleaning offices downtown. Time had become a smear of exhaustion and desperation. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, more to herself than to him. "Where am I supposed to go?" Emma stopped humming. She looked up at her mother, her brown eyes wide with sudden understanding that something was very wrong. "Mommy." Sarah forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. "It's okay, sweetie. Everything's going to be okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat uncomfortably. "I can give you until the end of the week. That's the best I can do without losing my job. If you can bring me the full amount by Friday at 5, I'll process it as if you paid on time. And if I can't, then I have to file the paperwork." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am." She stood, legs unsteady, and took Emma's hand. The little girl clutched her worn backpack, a stuffed rabbit's ear poking out from the partially open zipper. They had rescued that rabbit from a thrift store 2 years ago, when times had been better, when Sarah's ex-husband had still been sending child support before he disappeared into whatever new life he had built without them. The walk back to their apartment felt longer than usual. Second floor, Unit 2C, a one-bedroom that smelled faintly of the Indian food their neighbors cooked every evening. Sarah had given Emma the bedroom and made the living room couch her own bed, blankets folded neatly each morning to create the illusion of a proper home. Inside, Sarah closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to breathe. Emma dropped her backpack by the door and padded into the kitchen, pulling open the refrigerator. Sarah watched her daughter survey the sparse contents. A half-gallon of milk, some wilted lettuce, a package of hot dogs, and the remains of last night's rice and beans. "Can I have a snack?" Emma asked. "Sure, baby. There are crackers in the cupboard." While Emma crunched on saltines at the small dining table, Sarah pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked in one corner, a spiderweb pattern she had learned to ignore. She opened her banking app, though she already knew what it would show. Checking account, $37.12. Savings account, 0. She navigated to her recent transactions, a depressing scroll of necessities. Electricity bill, water bill, gas for the car, groceries, always the cheapest options, always calculated to the penny. Emma's school supplies, a prescription for the ear infection Emma had suffered through last month. There was no fat to trim. She was already living on bone. Sarah opened her contacts list and stared at the names. Her sister Jennifer, struggling herself with 3 kids and a husband who had just been laid off. Her friend Monica from high school, who had moved to California and started a family of her own. Her former co-worker Diane, who had quit the diner last year to take care of her sick mother. She couldn't ask any of them. They had their own burdens, their own battles. Her thumb hovered over another name, Marcus, her ex-husband, the man who had promised to love her forever and left when Emma was 3 years old. He owed months of child support, had dodged every attempt she made to contact him through official channels. But maybe if she called him directly, if she begged. No, she closed the app. She would not give him the satisfaction of hearing her desperation. Emma finished her crackers and climbed into Sarah's lap, wrapping her small arms around her mother's waist. "Mommy, why were you sad at Mr. Hendricks' office?" Sarah stroked her daughter's dark hair, so like her own. "Just some grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby, we're not in trouble." But they were. They absolutely were. That evening, after putting Emma to bed with a story and a kiss, Sarah sat at her laptop, the screen casting blue light across her exhausted features. She searched job listings, anything that paid more than her current wages. Administrative assistant positions required degrees she didn't have. Warehouse jobs conflicted with Emma's school schedule. Sales positions promised commission, but no guaranteed income. She applied to 15 jobs anyway, knowing most would never respond. Then she searched for emergency assistance programs, shelters, anything that might catch them if they fell. The forms were long, the requirements strict, the waiting list longer than the time she had left. At midnight, she finally closed the laptop and lay down on the couch, pulling the thin blanket over herself. Through the wall, she could hear their neighbors arguing in muffled voices. Above, someone's television played too loud. Outside, a siren wailed past. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to imagine a solution, but all she could see was Emma's face when the reality of homelessness finally sank in. The thought hollowed her out. She must have fallen asleep eventually, because she woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and Emma shaking her shoulder. "Mommy, it's time for school." Sarah dragged herself upright, every muscle protesting. She had worked a double shift the day before, and her body felt like it had been beaten. But she forced herself into motion, making Emma breakfast, packing her lunch, helping her get dressed. They walked the 3 blocks to Riverside Elementary together, hand in hand. Emma chattered about her upcoming class project, something about butterflies and life cycles. Sarah nodded at appropriate moments, trying to focus, trying to be present for these moments that might be numbered. At the school entrance, Emma hugged her goodbye and ran inside, backpack bouncing against her small shoulders. Sarah watched until she disappeared around a corner, then turned and walked toward the bus stop. She had an hour before her shift at the diner started, barely enough time to get across town. The bus was crowded, morning commuters packed shoulder to shoulder. Sarah found a spot near the back and held onto the overhead rail, as the vehicle lurched forward. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She stared out the window at the city passing by, all the buildings and businesses that represented lives she couldn't access. So many people, so much money flowing through the world, and yet she couldn't grasp even the smallest fraction of what she needed. The diner, Pete's Place, occupied a corner lot in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The neon sign flickered, permanently stuck between PE's PLC and complete darkness. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon grease hung in the air, familiar and oddly comforting. Sarah tied on her apron and grabbed her order pad, slipping into the rhythm she knew by heart. Her section filled quickly with a breakfast rush. Construction workers wanting eggs and toast. Elderly regulars nursing coffee and reading newspapers. A young couple who looked like they had been up all night. Exhaustion and happiness mixed in equal measure on their faces. Sarah took orders, delivered food, refilled coffee cups, and smiled through it all. Her feet ached in shoes that needed replacing. Her back throbbed from the constant movement. But she kept going because what else could she do? During a brief lull, her manager Pete called her over to the counter. He was a heavy-set man in his 60s, gray hair slicked back, perpetual coffee stain on his white shirt. He had owned this diner for 30 years and had seen every kind of person walk through his door. "Sarah, you got a minute?" "Sure, Pete. What's up?" He pulled out an envelope from beneath the register and slid it across to her. "Your paycheck came in early. Thought you might need it sooner rather than later." Sarah opened the envelope and stared at the check. $342. For 2 weeks of work, minus taxes. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "Thanks, Pete." She folded it and tucked it into her apron pocket. "You doing okay?" he asked, and there was genuine concern in his gruff voice. "You've been looking pretty worn out lately." "I'm fine. Just tired." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If you need any extra shifts, you let me know. Can't pay you more per hour, but I can give you more hours if you want them." "I appreciate that." But more hours meant less time with Emma, meant more exhaustion, meant stretching herself even thinner than she already was. There had to be a limit to how much one person could bend before breaking. The lunch rush began, and Sarah threw herself back into work. Take orders, deliver food, clear tables, smile, repeat. Her mind spun with calculations. The check plus what she already had gave her about $380. She was still short, nearly $900. Around 2 in the afternoon, during another lull, Sarah sat in the break room and stared at her phone. She tried everything she could think of, every legitimate option. Now her mind wandered into darker territory. Payday loans with their predatory interest rates. Pawn shops where she could sell the few valuable items she owned. Plasma donation centers that paid for blood. She opened a browser and searched for payday loan locations nearby. The terms made her stomach turn. Interest rates above 300%. Fees that would trap her in an endless cycle of debt. But at least Emma would have a roof over her head. Before she could talk herself out of it, Sarah stood and approached Pete. "Hey, I need to run an errand during my break. Is that okay?" "Sure, just be back in an hour." She grabbed her purse and walked out into the afternoon sun. The payday loan store was 6 blocks away, sandwiched between a liquor store and a check-cashing business. The windows were covered in bright yellow signs promising fast cash with no credit check. Sarah pushed open the door. Inside, the space was small and cramped, with bulletproof glass separating customers from the employees. A tired-looking woman behind the glass looked up as Sarah approached. "Can I help you?" "I need information about getting a loan." The woman slid a laminated sheet of paper through the slot at the bottom of the glass. "Fill this out. We'll need to see your ID, proof of income, and a post-dated check for the amount you want to borrow plus fees." Sarah took the paper and sat in one of the plastic chairs lined against the wall. The form asked for basic information: name, address, employer, bank account details. She filled it out mechanically, her handwriting shaky. When she returned it to the window, the woman reviewed it quickly. "How much do you need?" $900. The woman typed into her computer. "Interest rate is 15% per 2 weeks. So you'd owe us $1,035 in 2 weeks, or $2,070 in 4 weeks if you roll it over. Sarah's hand tightened on her purse strap. That's insane. The woman shrugged. That's the rate. Take it or leave it. What if I can't pay it back in 2 weeks? Then we cash the check you gave us, and if it bounces, we send it to collections. You'll also accrue additional fees. Sarah stood there, paralyzed by the choice in front of her. She could take this loan and have the money for rent, but then in 2 weeks, she would owe even more than she owed now. It was a trap, a cycle designed to keep people like her drowning. I need to think about it, she finally said. Sure, we're here until 6. Sarah walked out of the store and stood on the sidewalk, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Cars passed by, people going about their lives, unaware of the small tragedy playing out on this corner. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emma's school, parent-teacher conferences next week. Please call to schedule. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to disappear into nothing and let all of this just stop. Instead, she walked back to the diner and finished her shift. By the time she picked up Emma from the after-school program, Sarah had made a decision. She wouldn't take the payday loan. She would go to the rental office tomorrow and beg for more time. She would explain her situation, appeal to Mr. Hendricks' humanity, and pray that it would be enough. That evening, she made dinner from what little they had left in the pantry. Spaghetti with tomato sauce, no meat, no vegetables. Emma ate without complaint, telling Sarah about her day at school, about the butterfly drawing she had made, about her friend Sophie who had gotten new shoes. After dinner, Sarah helped Emma with her homework, simple addition and subtraction problems that her daughter worked through with careful concentration. Then they read together on the couch, a library book about a bear who learned to share. When Emma finally fell asleep, Sarah carried her to bed and tucked her in, brushing a kiss across her forehead. In the dim light from the hallway, Emma looked so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea how close they were to losing everything. Sarah returned to the living room and sat in the darkness, too exhausted to even turn on a light. Tomorrow she would go to the rental office. Tomorrow she would find a way. She had to. The next morning arrived too quickly. Sarah called in sick to work, something she almost never did, and left Emma with their neighbor Mrs. Chun, an elderly woman who occasionally watched her for a few hours. Then she walked to the rental office, rehearsing what she would say with each step. The office was busier today. Several people sat in the waiting area, filling out forms or talking quietly with staff members. Sarah approached the receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and tired eyes. I need to speak with Mr. Hendricks. It's urgent. He's with someone right now. You'll have to wait. Sarah sat in one of the plastic chairs and watched the clock on the wall tick forward. 15 minutes. 20. 30. Her palms were sweating. Her heart raced. Finally, Mr. Hendricks' door opened and an older man walked out, looking frustrated. The receptionist gestured to Sarah. You can go in now. Sarah stood and walked into the small office, closing the door behind her. Mr. Hendricks looked up from his computer, his expression already weary. Mrs. Mitchell, I assume you're here about the rent. Yes. I wanted to ask if there's any way you could give me more time. Just until the end of the month. I'm picking up extra shifts and I'm expecting a tax refund, and I just need a little more time. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Sarah, I wish I could help you. I really do. But I already extended the deadline to Friday. The owners are breathing down my neck. If I don't have your full payment by 5 o'clock tomorrow, I have to file the eviction paperwork. That's out of my hands. Please. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I have nowhere else to go. I understand that, and I'm sorry. Have you looked into emergency assistance programs? The county has resources for people in your situation. I've applied to everything. They all have waiting lists, or I don't qualify because I'm technically still employed. What about family? Friends? There's no one. The words hung in the air between them, stark and terrible in their honesty. Mr. Hendricks sighed and rubbed his temples. Look, I'll tell you what I can do. If you can bring me at least half the amount by tomorrow, I'll talk to the owners about a payment plan for the rest. But I need to see that you're making a genuine effort. I can't just waive the rent. Half. Sarah calculated quickly. That would be $600. With her paycheck and what she had saved, she could maybe scrape together $500. I don't know if I can do that. Then I don't know what to tell you, Sarah. I'm sorry. She stood, legs shaking, and walked out of the office. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to breathe through the panic rising in her chest. This was it. She was out of options. Sarah walked out of the rental office building and into the parking lot, barely seeing where she was going. Her mind spun with impossible calculations, each scenario ending in disaster. The afternoon sun beat down on her, and she realized she had been standing still for several minutes, just staring at nothing. She needed to move. She needed to think. She needed a miracle. Her phone buzzed with a notification. A text from Mrs. Chun. Emma asking for you. Everything okay? Sarah typed back. Be there soon. Thank you. But first, she had one more place to try. One last desperate attempt. The church stood on a corner 3 blocks from her apartment, a modest brick building with a white steeple and a wooden sign that read Community Baptist Church. All welcome. Sarah had passed it 100 times but never gone inside. She wasn't religious, hadn't been raised in any particular faith, but she knew churches sometimes had emergency funds for people in crisis. She pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped into the cool interior. The sanctuary was empty, rows of pews facing a simple altar. Afternoon light filtered through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across the floor. Hello. Her voice echoed in the space. A door to the side opened, and a woman emerged, middle-aged with graying hair pulled back in a bun, wearing jeans and a sweater. Can I help you? I'm looking for whoever runs the assistance program. I was told churches sometimes help people with emergency situations. The woman's expression softened with understanding. She had clearly heard this request many times before. I'm Pastor Linda. Come with me to the office. Sarah followed her through a hallway lined with children's drawings and community announcements. The office was small but welcoming, with bookshelves along one wall and a desk cluttered with papers and coffee mugs. Pastor Linda gestured to a chair. Please sit. Tell me what's going on. Sarah sat and found herself pouring out the whole story. The rent she couldn't pay. The eviction notice looming. Emma. The jobs that didn't pay enough. The ex-husband who disappeared. All of it spilling out in a rush of words she couldn't control. Pastor Linda listened without interrupting, her expression compassionate but not pitying. When Sarah finally finished, the pastor pulled out a folder from a filing cabinet. Our benevolence fund is designed exactly for situations like yours, she said. We can usually help with up to $300 for rent or utilities. It's not a loan, you don't have to pay it back. But we do require some documentation. Proof of your financial situation, a copy of your eviction notice, and a letter from your landlord stating the amount owed. $300. Sarah felt both grateful and devastated. It would help, but it still wouldn't be enough. Thank you. That's incredibly generous. What do I need to do? Gather the documents I mentioned and bring them back tomorrow morning. We have a committee meeting at 10, and we can usually process emergency requests within 24 hours. Sarah nodded, trying to calculate how this fit into her timeline. If she could get $300 from the church, plus her paycheck, plus what she had saved, she might be able to bring Mr. Hendricks around $500 tomorrow. It still wasn't half of what she owed, but maybe it would be enough to show good faith. There's one more thing, Pastor Linda said gently. Have you considered reaching out to Catholic charities? They sometimes have larger emergency funds available. And there's a nonprofit called Home Safe that specifically helps families facing eviction. They might be able to provide mediation services with your landlord or even cover a portion of the rent directly. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed in the names. Thank you. I'll call them right away. You're welcome to use our phone here if you'd like some privacy. For the next hour, Sarah sat in that small church office making phone calls. Catholic Charities had a 2-week waiting list for intake appointments. HomeSafe was out of funds until next quarter. 3 other organizations she tried either didn't serve her zip code or had already closed their applications for the month. Each rejection felt like another door slamming shut. Finally, Sarah thanked Pastor Linda and walked out into the afternoon heat. She picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's apartment, thanking her profusely and promising to return the favor somehow. Emma was full of energy, chattering about a game she had played, oblivious to her mother's exhaustion. They walked home together, and Sarah made dinner from the last of their groceries. Macaroni and cheese from a box, carrots that were starting to go soft. Emma ate happily, telling Sarah about a boy at school who had brought a lizard for show and tell. After dinner, while Emma watched a cartoon on their old television, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and applied for credit cards she knew she wouldn't qualify for. She searched for side gigs, anything she could do to make money quickly. Dog walking, house sitting, online surveys that paid pennies. Nothing that would generate the hundreds of dollars she needed by tomorrow afternoon. At 9 o'clock, she put Emma to bed, reading her another library book, this one about a mouse who was afraid of the dark. Emma's eyes grew heavy, and she curled around her stuffed rabbit, already half asleep. "Mommy," she murmured, "are you sad?" Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "Just a little tired, baby. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in the whole world." Emma's breathing deepened into sleep. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, watching her daughter's peaceful face, memorizing every detail. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would protect this child. She would find a way. She returned to the living room and lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The weight of failure pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had tried everything she could think of, called every resource, begged everyone she could reach. And it still wasn't enough. Maybe, she thought, she should take the payday loan after all. At least then, Emma wouldn't be homeless. They could deal with the debt later, somehow. But even as she thought it, she knew it was just trading one disaster for another. Sleep came in fitful waves, her dreams filled with anxiety and falling. Morning arrived with weak sunlight through the curtains. Sarah dragged herself upright, her body protesting every movement. She got Emma ready for school on autopilot, making breakfast, packing lunch, helping with shoes and backpack. They walked to school together, Emma skipping ahead occasionally before running back to grab Sarah's hand. At the school entrance, Emma hugged her extra tight. "You seem really tired, Mommy. Are you sick?" "No, baby. I'm okay. Just didn't sleep well. You have a good day at school. Okay? I love you." "Love you too." Emma ran inside, her backpack bouncing. Sarah watched until she disappeared, then turned and walked toward the bus stop. She had to go back to the church first to drop off the documents Pastor Linda had requested, then to the bank to deposit her paycheck and withdraw everything she had, then to the rental office for a final confrontation with Mr. Hendricks. The church office was quiet when she arrived. She handed over the folder of paperwork to Pastor Linda, who reviewed it quickly and nodded with sympathy. "We'll discuss this at our meeting in an hour. Can you call me around 11? "Yes. Thank you so much for even considering this." Sarah left and went to the bank, standing in line behind an elderly man who seemed to be conducting some complicated transaction involving multiple accounts. When it was finally her turn, Sarah handed over her paycheck and her deposit slip. The teller processed it efficiently. "This will take 1 business day to clear." "What?" "No, I need access to that money today." "I'm sorry, but policy requires a hold on checks over $300 for first-time deposit from that particular employer. But I've been depositing checks from them for months." The teller looked at her screen. "According to our records, you've been doing direct deposit. This is the first physical check from this employer, so it falls under the whole policy." Sarah wanted to argue, to demand to speak to a manager, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But she knew it would make no difference. Banks had their policies, and people like her had no leverage. "Fine. Can I withdraw what I already have in my account?" "Of course." Sarah withdrew $362, the last of her savings. She stuffed the bills into her wallet and walked out of the bank, trying not to cry in public. It was 10:45. She had just over 6 hours until the 5 o'clock deadline, and she had only $362. She sat on a bench outside the bank and called Pastor Linda. "Sarah, I'm calling from the committee meeting. I'm so sorry, but we've decided we can't help you." The words hit like ice water. "What? Why?" "Your documentation shows you're current employed and earning above the poverty line. Our fund is reserved for people who have absolutely no income. There are families in more desperate situations who need that money more urgently. I'm so sorry, but I'm about to be evicted. I have a 7-year-old daughter." "I understand. and I wish we could help everyone. But we have to allocate our limited resources according to strict criteria. Have you tried the other organizations I mentioned? Yes. None of them can help in my time frame. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'll keep you in my prayers. The call ended. Sarah sat on that bench and finally let the tears come. She cried silently, shoulders shaking, while people walked past without looking at her. Just another woman having a breakdown in public, invisible in her desperation. When she finally stopped, her phone showed 11:15. She had options left. She could go to the payday loan place and trap herself in debt. She could go to Mr. Hendricks and beg for mercy she knew he couldn't give. She could take Emma out of school right now and start sleeping in her car until they found shelter with space. None of them were real options. They were just different flavors of catastrophe. Sarah stood and walked slowly toward the rental office. She would try one last time to negotiate with Mr. Hendricks. Maybe if she explained everything, showed him how hard she had tried, he would convince the owners to show mercy. It was a thin hope, but it was all she had left. The rental office was busy again, several people waiting in the lobby. Sarah took a number from the dispenser and sat down to wait her turn. She watched the other people around her, wondering if they were also fighting for their homes, also drowning in systems designed to keep them under. 40 minutes passed before her number was called. She walked to the counter where a different employee, a young man with glasses, greeted her. "How can I help you?" "I need to speak with Mr. Hendricks about my rent payment. Mr. Hendricks is in meetings all afternoon. Is there something I can help you with?" "No, I specifically need to talk to him. It's about an eviction." The young man's expression shifted to practiced sympathy. "Let me see if I can pull you into his schedule. What's your unit number?" 2C. He typed into his computer, then frowned. "According to this, you have until 5 o'clock today to make your payment. Mr. Hendricks noted that you need to pay at least half the amount owed to avoid eviction proceedings." "I know. That's why I need to talk to him." "Ma'am, if you don't have the payment, talking to him won't change the policy." Sarah felt her control slipping. "Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." The young man looked uncomfortable, but picked up his phone and dialed an extension. A brief conversation followed, mostly one-sided. He hung up and shook his head. "I'm sorry. He can't see you right now. He says if you have the payment, you can leave it here at the counter. If you don't, there's nothing more he can do. But I spoke to him yesterday. He said if I could show good faith." "Ma'am, I'm just telling you what he said. If you'd like to leave a payment, I can process it now." Sarah stood there, feeling the eyes of everyone in the waiting room on her back. The young man waited patiently, his expression neutral but not unkind. Finally, Sarah pulled out her wallet and counted the bills onto the counter. $362. The young man counted it carefully. "This is $362. Your balance is $1,200. This doesn't meet the minimum required." "I know it doesn't, but it's everything I have. Can you please just tell Mr. Hendricks that I tried, that I brought everything I could? I'll make a note in your file. But, ma'am, I have to be honest with you. This isn't going to stop the eviction process. You'll receive formal notice within 3 business days." Sarah gathered the money back up, her hands shaking. "So that's it? I'm just supposed to accept that my daughter and I are going to be homeless? I don't know what to tell you. Have you tried applying for emergency assistance?" "Yes, I've tried everything." The young man's expression flickered with genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry. I wish there was something I could do." Sarah turned and walked out of the office in a daze. On the sidewalk outside, she stood still, unable to make her feet move in any direction. The afternoon sun was bright and hot, people passing by on their way to wherever they were going, and she was stuck in this moment of absolute helplessness. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Emma's school. Her heart seized. She answered immediately. "Hello, Mrs. Mitchell. This is Nurse Carey from Riverside Elementary. Emma had a fall on the playground during recess. She's okay, but she hit her head, and we think you should come pick her up. She's pretty shaken up." "Is she hurt badly?" "She has a bump, and she's crying. We've applied ice, but she keeps asking for you." "I'll be right there." Sarah ran for the bus stop, her lungs burning. Of course this would happen now, on top of everything else. The bus took forever to arrive, and the ride to the school felt like it moved through molasses. When she finally reached the school, she was escorted to the nurse's office where Emma sat on a cot, holding an ice pack to her forehead, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy." Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms, sobbing. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. Let me see." She gently moved the ice pack. There was a purple bump on Emma's forehead, but the skin wasn't broken. The nurse stood nearby, clipboard in hand. "She took a pretty good hit, but I don't think it's serious. Watch her for signs of concussion, vomiting, severe headache, dizziness, unusual sleepiness. If any of those develop, take her to the emergency room immediately." "Okay, thank you." Sarah signed Emma out, and they walked out of the school together, Emma clinging to her mother's hand, still sniffling. "Does it hurt a lot?" Sarah asked, crouching down to Emma's level as they stood on the sidewalk outside the school. "It hurt really bad, Mommy. I was on the monkey bars, and I slipped and fell. Everyone laughed at me." Sarah's heart clenched. "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. Kids can be thoughtless sometimes. But you're very brave. Can we go home? I just want to lie down." Home. The word echoed hollowly in Sarah's mind. How much longer would they have a home to go to? They took the bus back to the apartment, Emma leaning heavily against Sarah's side, the ice pack now lukewarm in a plastic bag. Sarah kept checking her daughter's eyes, looking for signs of concussion, but Emma seemed alert enough despite being tired and upset. Inside the apartment, Sarah settled Emma on the couch with her stuffed rabbit and a blanket. She made her some toast with butter, the last of their bread, and brought her a glass of water. "I want you to rest here for a bit while I make some phone calls, okay? If your head starts hurting worse, or if you feel sick to your stomach, you tell me right away." "Okay, Mommy." Emma curled up on the couch, and within minutes her breathing had evened into sleep. Sarah sat in the kitchen, her head in her hands, trying to think through the fog of exhaustion and despair. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. She had 2.5 hours until the deadline. $362 to her name, a daughter with a head injury, and absolutely no idea what to do next. Her phone buzzed. A text from Pete at the diner. "You okay? Need you for the dinner shift, if possible." Sarah stared at the message. She should go in. She needed every penny she could earn, but she also needed to watch Emma for signs of concussion. And what difference would one more shift make at this point? The money wouldn't clear in time anyway. She typed back, "Daughter hurt at school. Can't make it tonight. Sorry." His response came quickly, "No problem. Hope she's okay. Take care of her." Sarah set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. A few kids played on the swings, their laughter carrying up through the warm air. Life continuing as normal for everyone except her. She thought about the rental office, about Mr. Hendricks hiding in his office, about the young man at the counter with his practiced sympathy. She thought about all the people she had called, all the organizations with their policies and waiting lists and criteria she didn't quite meet. The system wasn't designed to catch people like her. She made just enough money to disqualify her from most assistance programs, but not nearly enough to actually survive. She had tried to do everything right, work hard, pay her bills, raise her daughter with love and stability. And none of it mattered because she had fallen into the gap between deserving and desperate. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Sarah crossed the living room quietly, checking that Emma was still sleeping, and looked through the peephole. Mrs. Chin stood in the hallway, holding a covered dish. Sarah opened the door. "Mrs. Chun, hi." The elderly woman smiled gently. "I made too much stir-fry for dinner. I thought you and Emma might like some." The kindness of it nearly broke Sarah. "Thank you. That's so thoughtful." Mrs. Chun handed her the warm dish, then patted Sarah's arm. "You look very tired, dear. Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm trying. If you need anything, you ask me, okay? I'm old, but I'm still useful." "Thank you. Really." After Mrs. Chun left, Sarah set the dish on the kitchen counter and stood there, overwhelmed by the simple generosity. Here was this woman who barely knew her, who lived on a fixed income herself, sharing what little she had. Why couldn't the world work more like this? Why couldn't the systems built to help people actually help, the way one neighbor helping another did? Sarah checked on Emma, who was still sleeping peacefully, then returned to the kitchen table with her phone. She had one more idea, born of absolute desperation. She opened Facebook and typed out a post. I never thought I'd be in this position, but I'm facing eviction tomorrow, and I'm out of options. I'm a single mom working full-time, but still short on rent. If anyone can help with any amount, I would be forever grateful. Venmo and PayPal info and comments. We'll pay it forward when I get back on my feet. Her finger hovered over the post button. Pride warred with necessity. This would mean admitting her failure to everyone she knew, making her desperation public for friends and acquaintances to judge. But Emma slept on the couch with a bump on her forehead, and in 2.5 hours their lives would change forever if Sarah didn't find Miracle. She pressed post. The response was immediate. Within 5 minutes, 3 people had commented with hearts and encouraging messages. Then the first notification came through. Jenny Martinez sent you $5. Then another. Michael Torres sent you $10. Sarah watched her phone with tears streaming down her face as small amounts trickled in. $5 from a high school friend she hadn't talked to in years. $20 from her former co-worker. $10 from someone she barely remembered. The amounts were tiny, but each one represented someone who saw her plea and decided to help. Each one was a small affirmation that she wasn't completely alone in this. After an hour, she had received $93. Combined with what she already had, that brought her to $455. Still not enough for half the rent. Still not enough to save them. But it was something. It was people trying. Emma stirred on the couch, sitting up slowly and rubbing her eyes. Mommy, I'm thirsty. Sarah quickly closed Facebook and went to get her daughter water. She sat beside Emma, checking her pupils, feeling her forehead for fever. How do you feel, sweetheart? Does your head hurt? A little bit. It's not too bad. Any nausea? Dizziness? No, just tired. Okay, you rest some more. I'll make us some dinner soon. Emma lay back down, and Sarah covered her with the blanket again. She checked the time. 4:15. 45 minutes until the deadline. Her phone buzzed with more Venmo notifications. Small amounts still trickling in. She was up to $523 now. At 4:30, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered hesitantly. Mrs. Mitchell, this is David Park from Home Safe. I understand you called us yesterday about emergency eviction assistance? Yes, but you said you were out of funds. We were, but we just received a large donation today, and I've been reviewing urgent cases. Your situation qualifies for our intervention program. We can't pay your full rent, but we can provide up to $500 in emergency assistance. And more importantly, we can provide legal representation to negotiate with your landlord. Sarah's hand shook so badly, she almost dropped the phone. Are you serious? Completely serious. But I need to be clear about the limitations. We can help you stay in your current apartment only if your landlord is willing to work with us on a payment plan. If he insists on full payment immediately, we may need to help you find alternative housing instead. Anything, any help at all, please. Can you come to our office right now? We're open until 6. I need you to sign some paperwork, and we need to call your landlord together before their office closes. Sarah looked at Emma on the couch. She couldn't leave her alone, and she couldn't wake her up to drag her across town again. I have my daughter with me, and she's had a head injury. Can I do this over the phone? Normally, no, but given your time constraint, I can make an exception. Give me your landlord's contact information, and I'll call them directly. Then I'll email you the forms, and you can sign them electronically. Sarah rattled off Mr. Hendricks' phone number and the rental office address. Her heart hammered as she heard David Park dialing. Hi, this is David Park from Home Safe calling about tenant Sarah Mitchell in Unit 2C. I understand she has an outstanding balance, and you're planning to file eviction paperwork today. A pause as Mr. Hendricks responded. Yes, I'm aware of the amount. I'm calling because Home Safe is prepared to provide $500 toward Mrs. Mitchell's rent immediately, and we'd like to work with you on a structured payment plan for the remainder. Mrs. Mitchell has been a good tenant for 3 years with no prior issues, and we believe with proper support she can get back on track. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah held her breath. I understand you have owners to answer to, but eviction is expensive for everyone involved. Court costs, potential property damage, lost rent during vacancy. It's in everyone's interest to work this out. If you're willing to accept our payment today, and create a payment plan for the balance. We can have this resolved immediately. Sarah closed her eyes, praying to whatever force might be listening. Excellent. I'll process the payment right now and email you confirmation. Can you agree not to file the eviction paperwork while we finalize the payment plan details? David Park caught Sarah's eye across the invisible phone line, and though she couldn't see him, she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Perfect. Thank you for working with us, Mr. Hendricks. Mrs. Mitchell will be in touch tomorrow to sign the formal agreement. Have a good evening. He hung up and spoke directly to Sarah. Okay, here's where we stand. I've agreed to pay $500 today, which combined with what you said you have, brings you to just over $1,000. That's not the full $1,200, but it's enough to show good faith. Mr. Hendricks has agreed to create a payment plan for the remaining balance. You'll need to go to his office tomorrow morning to sign the agreement. It will likely require you to pay the remaining $200 over the next 2 months in addition to your regular rent. I can do that, Sarah said, though she had no idea how she would actually manage it. But tomorrow's problem could wait until tomorrow. I'm emailing you the forms now. Sign them and send them back to me tonight. And Mrs. Mitchell? Yes. This doesn't solve all your problems. You need to look seriously at your income versus expenses situation. But at least you and your daughter won't be homeless tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you so much. After she hung up, Sarah sat in stunned silence. She had been so certain that today would end in disaster, that no matter what she did, she would fail. And yet here she was, still in her apartment, with a path forward however narrow. She transferred her $362 plus the $523 from Facebook donations to her checking account, then called Mr. Hendricks' office directly. The same young man from earlier answered. This is Sarah Mitchell in Unit 2C. I just spoke with David Park from Home Safe. You should have called about my account. Yes, I have his payment confirmation here. $500 received. And you're bringing. Let me check. $885 tomorrow morning to bring your account current minus the $200 that will go on the payment plan? That's correct. Okay, Mr. Hendricks left a note that he'll have the payment plan agreement ready for you to sign at 9 tomorrow morning. Don't be late. I won't be. Thank you. Sarah ended the call and sat there, letting the relief wash over her in waves. They were safe. Not secure, not stable, but safe for now. Emma would wake up tomorrow in her own bed. They wouldn't have to sleep in a car or shelter. She looked over at her daughter, still sleeping peacefully on the couch, the bump on her forehead already looking less swollen. This little girl who trusted her completely, who believed her mother could fix anything. Sarah had nearly failed her, had come within hours of failing her. But somehow, through a combination of desperate effort and unexpected kindness, they had made it through. Tomorrow would bring new problems. The payment plan would strain their already tight budget. She would need to find additional income somehow. But tonight they had a home. Sarah stood and went to the kitchen, heating up the stir-fry Mrs. Chun had brought. The smell of ginger and soy sauce filled the small apartment. When Emma woke up, they would eat together at their table in their kitchen in their home. It was enough. For now, it was enough. As Sarah set the table, her phone buzzed one more time. Another Facebook message, this one from someone whose name she didn't recognize. Saw your post. Can't send money, but I've been where you are. It gets better. Keep fighting. Sarah read the message twice, then typed back, thank you. That means more than you know. She looked around the apartment, at the worn furniture and the peeling paint, the toys scattered in the corner, and the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Emma stirred again, sitting up and stretching. Mommy, something smells good. Mrs. Chun brought us dinner. Come eat, baby. Emma padded over to the table, still a little wobbly, and climbed into her chair. Sarah served her a small portion, watching carefully to make sure she could eat without any issues. How's her head feeling? Better. Can I watch cartoons after dinner? For a little while, yes. They ate together in comfortable silence, just a mother and daughter sharing a meal. Sarah wondered if Emma had any idea how close they had come to losing this. How many times today Sarah had almost given up hope. But Emma didn't need to know that. She was 7 years old. She deserved to believe her mother had everything under control, that the world was safe and stable. Sarah would carry the weight of today's fear alone. That was her job as a mother. Shield her daughter from the harsh realities for as long as possible. Give her a childhood filled with security and love even when Sarah herself felt neither. After dinner, true to her word, Sarah let Emma watch cartoons while she washed the dishes. The warm water on her hands, the simple repetitive task, helped calm her still racing mind. She kept checking her phone, half expecting some new crisis to emerge, but nothing came. At 7:30, she gave Emma a bath, careful around the bump on her head, then helped her into pajamas and tucked her into bed. They read 2 stories tonight instead of 1, Emma's choice, and by the end of the second book, her daughter's eyes were drooping closed. "I love you, Emma. Love you too, Mommy. Will you be here when I wake up?" The question hit Sarah harder than it should have. Of course she would be here. Where else would she go? But Emma had felt her mother's anxiety all day, even if she couldn't name it. Children sense these things, the undercurrents of fear that adults try to hide. "I'll be here, baby. I promise. I'm not going anywhere." Emma smiled sleepily and closed her eyes, already drifting off. Sarah stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her daughter sleep, feeling the weight of that promise. She had almost broken it today, not by choice but by circumstance. How many other promises might she be forced to break in the future? How many times could she pull off a last-minute miracle before their luck ran out? She pushed the thoughts away and returned to the living room. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, and she opened it to check her email. The forms from Home Safe waited in her inbox. She read through them carefully, signing each one electronically, then sent them back. Another email had arrived while she was putting Emma to bed. The subject line read, "Job application status update." Sarah clicked it open, expecting another rejection. She had sent out so many applications over the past weeks that she had lost track of which jobs had which companies. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your application for the administrative assistant position at Riverside Medical Center. We would like to invite you for an interview next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Please reply to confirm your availability." Sarah read the email 3 times, unable to quite believe it. Riverside Medical was a large hospital system with good benefits and better pay than the diner. The position paid $16 an hour, nearly double what she made now. She hit reply immediately. "Thank you for this opportunity. I will be there Tuesday at 2 p.m. Looking forward to speaking with you." After sending it, she allowed herself a small moment of hope. Maybe things were finally starting to turn around. Maybe today's crisis was the bottom, and from here things could only get better. She knew better than to count on it. Life had taught her that hope was dangerous, that expecting good things only made the disappointments hurt more. But tonight, exhausted and emotionally drained, she needed to believe that something better might be possible. Sarah closed the laptop and lay down on the couch, pulling the blanket over herself. Tomorrow she would go to the rental office and sign the payment plan. She would figure out how to stretch her budget even further to cover the extra payments. She would go to work and keep pushing forward. But tonight she would rest. Tonight they were safe. Sleep came easier than she expected, and for the first time in days, Sarah's dreams were peaceful rather than anxious. She woke once during the night to check on Emma, finding her daughter sleeping soundly, the bump on her forehead already looking better. When morning light filtered through the curtains, Sarah opened her eyes to a new day. The crisis had passed. They had survived, and somehow that had to be enough to build on. She got up and started making breakfast, the familiar routine grounding her. Emma emerged from the bedroom, hair tousled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Mommy." "Good morning, sweetheart. How's your head?" "It doesn't hurt anymore. Can I have pancakes?" Sarah checked the pantry. They had just enough flour and milk left for a small batch. "Sure, baby. Pancakes coming right up." As she mixed the batter and heated the pan, Sarah felt something shift inside her. Yesterday had been one of the hardest days of her life, but she had gotten through it. She had found resources she didn't know existed. She had accepted help from strangers and friends alike. She had kept fighting even when it seemed pointless. Maybe that was what survival looked like. Not some dramatic victory or a perfect solution, but simply making it through one more day, cobbling together enough hope and help to see tomorrow. The pancakes sizzled in the pan, golden and ordinary and perfect. Sarah arrived at the rental office at 8:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early. Emma was at school, her head injury showing no signs of complications, just a fading bruise that would be gone in a week. Sarah carried a folder with all her documents, the bank transfer confirmations, the signed forms from Home Safe, everything organized and ready. Mr. Hendricks met her in the lobby himself this time, looking less harried than he had during their previous encounters. He gestured toward his office and held the door open for her. "Mrs. Mitchell, please sit down." Sarah took the chair across from his desk, placing her folder carefully in her lap. Her heart still raced despite yesterday's reprieve. Until she signed this payment plan and made the transfer official, nothing was guaranteed. Mr. Hendricks pulled out a multi-page document and slid it across the desk. "This is the payment plan agreement. You'll pay $200 over the next 2 months, $100 each month in addition to your regular rent. The agreement also states that if you're late on any payment by more than 5 days, the full balance becomes due immediately and we proceed with eviction. Do you understand these terms?" "Yes, I understand." "And you're confident you can meet these obligations?" Sarah thought about her budget, about the interview at Riverside Medical next week, about all the ways this could still fall apart. But she nodded. "I'll make it work." "All right then. Sign here, here, and initial here." She signed each line with a steady hand, her signature committing her to terms that would require her to be perfect for the next 60 days. No emergencies, no unexpected expenses, no room for error. Mr. Hendricks countersigned and made copies, handing one set to Sarah. "Your account is current as of this moment. The first payment plan installment is due with your November rent on the 1st. Don't be late." "I won't be. Thank you for working with me on this." He studied her for a moment, his expression softening slightly. "You've got a good kid, Mrs. Mitchell. I see her playing outside sometimes. She deserves stability. I hope you can pull this together." The words were kinder than she expected, a glimpse of the human being beneath the property manager's professional distance. "I will. I promise." Sarah left the office feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The weight hadn't disappeared completely, but it had shifted from crushing to merely heavy. She could carry heavy. She had been carrying heavy for years. She walked to the bus stop and checked her phone while waiting. Several messages from people who had seen her Facebook post, offering encouragement and small amounts of money she had already received. She needed to thank them all properly, find some way to pay forward the kindness they had shown. One message stood out from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, Sarah. This is Rebecca Chun, Mrs. Chen's granddaughter. My grandmother told me about your situation. I run a small marketing company, and I'm looking for someone to do part-time administrative work remotely. The pay is $15 an hour, 10 to 15 hours a week. Interested?" Sarah's hands trembled as she typed back. "Very interested. Thank you so much for thinking of me." The response came quickly. "Great. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow at 10? There's a place called Morningside Cafe on 5th Street. I'll be there. Thank you again." Sarah stared at the message, barely able to process this turn of fortune. Between her job at the diner, the potential position at Riverside Medical, and now this remote work opportunity, she might actually be able to build something sustainable. Not just surviving from crisis to crisis, but actually getting ahead. The bus arrived, and she climbed aboard, taking a seat near the window. The city rolled past, familiar streets and buildings she had seen 1,000 times. But today they looked different somehow, full of possibility instead of obstacles. At the diner, Pete greeted her with a nod and a fresh pot of coffee. "Emma doing okay?" "Much better. Just a bump. Kids are resilient." "Good to hear. Listen, I've been thinking. You're one of my best waitresses. What if I made you shift supervisor? It's only $1 more an hour, but you get first pick of shifts and some authority over scheduling." $1 an hour didn't sound like much, but over a year it added up to over $2,000. Combined with everything else, it might be enough to finally stop drowning. "I'd love that, Pete. Thank you. You've earned it. Start next week." Sarah tied on her apron and moved into the familiar rhythm of taking orders and delivering food. But today the work felt different, less like desperation and more like building towards something. Each table she served, each tip she collected, was a brick in a foundation she was constructing one day at a time. The lunch rush came and went. Sarah wiped down tables and refilled salt shakers during the lull, her mind already planning how to budget the additional income. She could put $50 a month into savings, build an emergency fund so the next crisis wouldn't devastate them. She could buy Emma new shoes, the kind that fit properly instead of slightly too small hand-me-downs. She could maybe even take her daughter to a movie, something they hadn't done in over a year. Around 2 in the afternoon, a man walked into the diner alone. Sarah noticed him immediately because he stood out from their usual clientele. His suit was expensive, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, and his shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He looked like he had taken a wrong turn and ended up somewhere far beneath his usual standards. Sarah grabbed a menu and approached his table. "Afternoon. Can I get you started with something to drink?" He glanced up from his phone, and for a moment their eyes met. His were dark brown, tired despite the expensive clothes, carrying a weight she recognized. "Coffee black, and I'll take a look at the menu." "Sure thing." She brought him coffee and gave him a few minutes to decide. When she returned, he ordered a simple burger and fries, nothing fancy. While she put in his order, she studied him from across the diner. He didn't look at his phone constantly like most people did. Instead, he stared out the window at the street, lost in thought. When Sarah delivered his food, he thanked her quietly and ate without rush. She noticed he left half the fries untouched, pushing them around his plate absently. Something about his demeanor reminded her of herself, that particular kind of exhaustion that came from carrying burdens no one else could see. When he finished, Sarah brought the check. He pulled out his wallet and placed a credit card on top of the bill without looking at the amount. While she processed it at the register, she noticed the name on the card, Daniel Ross. She brought back the receipt for him to sign. He wrote in a tip that made her do a double take. $50 on a $15 meal. "Sir, I think you made a mistake on the tip." He looked up at her, his expression gentle. "No mistake. You look like someone who could use a good day." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "That's very generous." "Thank you. You're welcome." He stood and picked up his suit jacket from the back of the chair. "This place, Pete's, he's the owner?" "Yes, that's him." Sarah gestured toward the kitchen where Pete was visible through the service window. Daniel Ross nodded slowly. "He seems like a good man. You seem like a good person, too. I hope things work out for you." Before Sarah could respond, he was gone, the door chiming as he stepped back out into the afternoon heat. She stood there holding the receipt, trying to understand what had just happened. $50. That was groceries for a week. That was Emma's school field trip fee she hadn't been able to afford. That was a stranger seeing her struggle and choosing to help. Pete came out from the kitchen. "Who was that guy?" "I don't know." Said his name was Daniel Ross. Left a $50 tip. Pete whistled low. "Well, I'll be. Maybe he's one of those secret millionaire types who goes around doing good deeds." Sarah tucked the receipt into her apron pocket. Maybe. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She kept thinking about Daniel Ross, about the way he had looked at her with recognition, like he understood something about her situation without her having to explain. It reminded her of yesterday, of all the small kindnesses that had added up to salvation. Mrs. Chun with her stir-fry. The people on Facebook sending $5 and $10. David Park from Home Safe. Mr. Hendricks agreeing to the payment plan. Maybe the world wasn't as cold and indifferent as it sometimes seemed. Maybe there were more good people than bad, and she had just been too buried in her own struggle to notice them. When her shift ended, Sarah picked up Emma from the after-school program, and they walked home together. Emma talked excitedly about a science project they were starting in class, something about growing plants in different types of soil. Sarah listened and asked questions, fully present in a way she hadn't been able to be during the crisis. At home, Sarah made dinner from the groceries she had been able to buy with some of the Facebook donations. Real chicken breasts instead of hot dogs. Fresh broccoli instead of canned vegetables. It wasn't fancy, but it was nutritious and filling. After dinner, while Emma did her homework at the kitchen table, Sarah sat with her laptop and started looking at budgeting templates. She created a spreadsheet with all their income sources listed on one side and all their expenses on the other. For the first time, the income column was longer than it had been in months. If she got the job at Riverside Medical and the remote work with Rebecca Chun panned out and kept her shifts at the diner, she would be making almost twice what she currently earned. After taxes and childcare costs, she would still have a cushion. Not a big one, but enough to breathe. Sarah saved the spreadsheet and closed the laptop, feeling something unfamiliar. Not quite happiness, but maybe its quieter cousin, contentment. The apartment was warm. Emma was safe and healthy. The rent was paid. Tomorrow held possibilities instead of just threats. The next morning, Sarah dropped Emma at school and took the bus to Morningside Cafe. She arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a small coffee, finding a table near the window. The cafe was bright and modern, filled with people working on laptops or having quiet conversations. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman in her early 30s walked in, looking around until she spotted Sarah. She was Asian, with short black hair and glasses, dressed casually in jeans and a blazer. "Sarah? I'm Rebecca." They shook hands, and Rebecca ordered a latte before sitting down. "Thanks for meeting me. My grandmother speaks very highly of you. She said you're reliable and hardworking, which is exactly what I need. She's been very kind to me and my daughter. That's Grandma Chun. She collects strays." Rebecca smiled warmly. "I mean that in the best way. She has a gift for seeing who needs help and providing it without making them feel small. She does. I'm very grateful for her." Rebecca pulled out her phone and opened a notes app. "So here's what I'm looking for. I need someone to manage my email, schedule appointments, do basic bookkeeping, and handle social media posts for my clients. Most of it can be done on your own schedule as long as deadlines are met. I'm thinking 10 to 15 hours a week to start, with possibility for more if things go well. Does that sound manageable with your other job?" "Absolutely. I'm good with computers, and I'm very organized." "Perfect. The pay is $15 an hour, paid bi-weekly through direct deposit. When can you start?" "Whenever you need me. How about Monday? I'll email you login credential for the systems you'll need to access, along with a training manual I put together. We could do a video call that afternoon to go over everything." They spent the next 20 minutes discussing specifics, Rebecca explaining her business and what she would need from Sarah. The work sounded straightforward, nothing Sarah couldn't handle. As they were wrapping up, Rebecca hesitated, then spoke more quietly. "Listen, I know my grandmother told me a bit about your situation. I've been where you are, single mom struggling to make ends meet. It gets better. You're doing the right things, working hard, accepting help when it's offered. Just keep going." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means a lot. We women have to look out for each other, especially mothers. Nobody else is going to do it for us." After Rebecca left, Sarah sat in the cafe for a few more minutes, sipping her coffee and watching people pass by outside. 2 days ago, she had been counting coins and facing homelessness. Now she had a payment plan, a promotion at the diner, and a new job opportunity. The interview at Riverside Medical was still ahead, another potential door opening. She thought about Daniel Ross and his $50 tip, about Rebecca offering her work, about all the small acts of grace that had caught her when she was falling. Maybe that was how the world actually worked. Not through grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but through ordinary people choosing to be kind when they had the chance. Sarah finished her coffee and headed to the bus stop. She had a few hours before her shift at the diner, enough time to go home and start learning the systems Rebecca had mentioned. Emma would be at school until 3, giving Sarah quiet time to focus. On the bus ride home, her phone rang. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello. Hi. Is this Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes, this is she. This is Karen Williams from Riverside Medical Center. I'm calling about your interview scheduled for next Tuesday." Sarah's heart sank. They were calling to cancel. Of course they were. "I'm afraid we need to reschedule. Dr. Patterson, who is going to conduct your interview, has a family emergency. Would Thursday at 10 work for you instead?" Relief flooded through her. "Thursday at 10 works perfectly. Thank you." "Great. We'll see you then. And Sarah, I've reviewed your application. Your experience may be limited, but your references from Pete's Diner were glowing. We're really looking forward to meeting you. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it too. After hanging up, Sarah leaned her head against the bus window and allowed herself a small smile. Things were coming together. Slowly, imperfectly, but they were coming together. The bus dropped her off at her stop, and she walked the 2 blocks to her apartment building. As she approached, she noticed a sleek black car parked in the visitor spot, expensive-looking and out of place in their modest complex. Sarah climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor and was surprised to find someone standing outside her door. A man in a charcoal suit that looked familiar. Daniel Ross. She stopped, confused. Mr. Ross? What are you doing here? He turned, and she saw the same tired weight in his eyes that she had noticed at the diner. Mrs. Mitchell, I apologize for showing up unannounced. I need to talk to you about something important. How did you know where I live? I asked Pete. I told him I had something urgent to discuss with you, and he was kind enough to give me your address. I hope that's not too invasive. Sarah approached cautiously, keys in hand. What's this about? Daniel took a breath, and she could see he was struggling with how to begin. 23 years ago, my younger sister Emma died. She was 7 years old, same age as your daughter. The mention of Emma's name sent a chill down Sarah's spine. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I don't understand what that has to do with me. My sister died because our family couldn't afford the medical treatment she needed. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough. The hospital bills bankrupted my parents. They lost their house, their savings, everything. Emma died in a county hospital because we couldn't pay for the specialist she needed. Sarah's hand tightened on her keys. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. After she died, I swore I would never let money be the reason someone suffered. I worked my way through college, built a successful business, made more money than I ever dreamed possible. And I've spent the last 15 years trying to make up for the fact that I couldn't save my sister. Mr. Ross, I still don't understand why you're here. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a check, holding it out to her. Yesterday at the diner, I overheard you talking to Pete. You told him about your rent situation, about how close you came to being evicted, about your daughter Emma. Sarah's breath caught. She had mentioned it briefly during a quiet moment, not realizing anyone was listening. When I heard your daughter's name, it felt like a sign. I know that sounds strange, but I've been looking for ways to help people in situations like the one my family faced. Real people, not just donations to charities where I never see the impact. He pressed the check into her hand. Sarah looked down at it and felt the world tilt. It was made out to her for $10,000. I can't accept this. She tried to hand it back, but he stepped away. Yes, you can. Consider it an investment in your future and your daughter's future. Pay off your debts. Build a savings account. Give yourself room to breathe. But I don't know you. This is too much. I can't possibly repay this. I'm not asking you to repay it. I'm asking you to accept help when it's offered, and someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you do it. That's all. Sarah stared at the check, her mind unable to process this. $10,000. It would wipe out every debt she had. It would give Emma the stability she deserved. It would change everything. Why me? She whispered. Because yesterday I saw someone who reminded me of my mother. Tired but still fighting. Broke but still kind. Working herself to exhaustion to give her child a better life. And I thought about how different our lives might have been if someone had helped us when we needed it most. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll use it to build something better. That's enough. Sarah looked at this stranger who was offering her salvation for the 2nd time in 2 days, first with the tip, and now with this incomprehensible generosity. She thought about Emma, about the apartment they almost lost, about all the nights she had lain awake wondering how much longer she could keep going. Okay, she said quietly. I'll accept it, and I promise I'll pay it forward. Daniel smiled, the weight in his eyes lifting slightly. That's all I ask. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Mitchell. Take care of Emma. She's lucky to have a mother who fights so hard for her. He turned and walked down the stairs, leaving Sarah standing in the hallway with a check that represented more money than she had earned in the past year. She unlocked her door and went inside, sitting down at the kitchen table with shaking hands. $10,000. She could pay off the credit cards that had been maxed out for months. She could buy Emma a Real bed instead of the secondhand mattress on the floor. She could fix the car that had been making concerning noises. She could put money into savings so the next emergency wouldn't destroy them. But more than that, she could breathe. For the first time in years, she could actually breathe. Sarah sat there for a long time, holding the check and crying. Not from sadness or despair, but from overwhelming relief and gratitude. 2 days ago, she had been at the absolute bottom, convinced that she had failed her daughter. Now, through a combination of hard work, accepting help, and inexplicable kindness from strangers, she had a path forward. She thought about Daniel Ross and his sister Emma, about the tragedy that had shaped his life and led him to this moment of generosity. She thought about Mrs. Chun and Rebecca, about Pete and David Park, about every person who had extended a hand when she was drowning. The world was hard and unfair and often cruel, but it was also full of people who chose kindness when they could have chosen indifference. It was full of second chances and unexpected grace. Sarah wiped her tears and stood up. She had work to do, emails to send to Rebecca, preparation for her interview at Riverside Medical. She had a daughter to pick up from school and dinner to make. She had a life to build, brick by brick, with the foundation that had been given to her. That evening, when Emma came home from school, Sarah sat her down on the couch and pulled her close. "Baby, I need to tell you something. We had some trouble with money, and I was really worried for a while. But some very kind people helped us, and everything is going to be okay now." Emma looked up at her with those wide brown eyes. "I know, Mommy. I heard you crying sometimes at night, but I knew you would fix it. You always fix things." Sarah's throat tightened. Her daughter had known, had carried that worry silently, trusting that her mother would find a way. The weight of that trust was enormous, but for the first time in years, Sarah felt capable of carrying it. "I love you so much, Emma." "I love you too, Mommy. Can we have ice cream for dessert?" Sarah laughed through fresh tears. "Yes, baby. We can have ice cream." That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah deposited the check using her phone's banking app. She watched the pending transaction appear in her account. The number so large it looked like a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was real. She created a plan for the money, allocating specific amounts to specific purposes. $3,000 to pay off credit cards, $1,000 for car repairs and Emma's needs, $6,000 into a savings account that she would not touch except for true emergencies. Then she opened her laptop and typed out a long Facebook post, thanking everyone who had helped her. The friends who sent small donations, the strangers who offered encouragement, David Park and Home Safe, Rebecca Chun, and though she didn't name him, she thanked the stranger whose generosity had changed their lives. The responses came quickly, people congratulating her, sharing their own stories of hardship and recovery. Sarah read each one, feeling connected to a web of humanity she hadn't known existed. Before bed, she checked on Emma one more time, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. Tomorrow they would wake up in their apartment, secure for the first time in years. Tomorrow Sarah would start her new remote job and continue preparing for her interview. Tomorrow they would keep building. But tonight, Sarah allowed herself to simply feel grateful. For Emma, for their home, for every person who had chosen to help when they didn't have to. The road ahead would still have challenges, but she would face them with resources she had never had before. Not just money, but something more valuable, the knowledge that she didn't have to fight alone. That accepting help wasn't weakness, but wisdom. That the world, despite all its cruelty, still held enough kindness to catch you when you fell. Sarah closed her eyes and slept deeply, dreamlessly, for the first time in months. When morning came, she would wake to a new beginning. But for now, rest was enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.